Hi, my name is Craig Fraser, and today I'm here to show you some work using not just the Candy 2.0 Blood Red, but also the Quicksilver Chrome and the Quicksilver Gold Chrome. In the past, you may have seen me using different candy effects or different pearlized effects on top of Quicksilver, and this time we're going to actually show incorporating the Quicksilver. You can layer candies on top, but you can also mix candies in with them, and we discovered that it creates two different effects. When you're putting candy on top of Quicksilver, it's very similar to a typical candy paint job that goes over metallic, except the Quicksilver is a very, very fine metallic, so you don't see the sparkles in it. It looks like bare metal, and you get a lot of great depth and a lot of great shifts when you look at different angles, and just real brilliance of the candy over that Quicksilver. If you mix it in, you don't have the same amount of depth. We discovered you get a really cool color shift, and it looks like an anodized metal. Like you've seen like anodized red or blue anodizing on boats or different fittings. It has a really cool look. You can see like the grind metal underneath, and it just has a really great metallic look. But it literally takes the candy and turns it into what we call a base coat. So we're going to create what these are called, these anodized base coats, and I'm going to do three of them up here. Two of them I'm going to do one where we're mixing the Candy 2.0 Blood Red candy in with the Quicksilver Chrome, and we're doing a 1:1:1 ratio. That is Quicksilver Chrome, Candy 2.0, and then the third part of the 1:1:1 ratio is the 40:40. And the 40:40 is important. It's a bleed checker. Normally we use the 40:40 bleed checker on top of paint to prevent candies from bleeding through, but in this case what we're doing is we're creating a binder inside this anodizing base coat to prevent it from stacking and getting darker. So once you use it, it'll continue to stay the same color because that internal bleed check is working. And then the third one I'm going to do is just going to be pure Quicksilver Chrome with the Candy Blood Red on top of that to show you the difference between layering candy on the Quicksilver and mixing it in with inside of it. Now you always want the Quicksilver Chrome to dry for at least 15 to 20 minutes before you apply any candy on it, maybe even as much as an hour, just to prevent the candy from bleeding in and dulling the Quicksilver. So I'm going to spray the Quicksilver Chrome first, just over one of these little flame licks, then clean out the airbrush and start showing you the anodized colors. Okay, I've got my trusty TH airbrush with the fan head on there, and I've already cleaned the brush out and got the Quicksilver in there. Do not add any reducer to Quicksilver. You don't need it. It comes right out of the bottle, but make sure you shake the bottle up really good because the metallic can settle. And I will very, very lightly come in with a light dust coat back and forth over the black and then blow air on it. You can see this dry significantly faster than most other paints. Another nice thing about this is, it does dry very fast. It's also very durable. The Quicksilver is a great base because it locks on almost any substrate, and then candies love being on top of it. This just literally sticks right to it. You have very little delamination issues with Quicksilver. You can also modify your Quicksilver. If you want, you can take the Quicksilver and you can mix it with any of the existing Autowear metallics, fine metallics, Actress Gold, any of those, and they mix well together, and it'll actually increase the coverage of that paint. At the same time, give it a little bit of a different shimmer. Always test it first, because it may give a cool effect you like, but it may also create something that doesn't quite work for what you want to do. But I always tell people, experiment with mixing the Quicksilver in with another metallic. And just drying it, let dry. Put maybe one more coat on it. Flip my fan pattern over and just go all the way down. There we go. Now you don't want any modeling, so try not to hit it real heavy. I'm just spraying air right now. And air is the most important way to dry these paints. Don't use heat. You don't want the building or the booth to be cold, but you don't want forced heat on this paint because it'll tend to skim on the outside and trap moisture on the inside. So we're going to let that dry for a couple minutes. We're going to clean this airbrush out, and we're going to go right into demonstrating the anodized candies. Okay, I'm back, got my gun good and cleaned out, and I'm not really that worried. Usually I'm very cautious about cleaning my gun out of Quicksilver before I go to another product, but in this case we're actually going to a product that has Quicksilver in it. Still clean it out really good. If you let your gun sit with the Quicksilver or any metallic, the problem is all metallics will tend to settle, and they'll settle down in an area down here that makes it really difficult to clean out later. So it's always good to don't let your paint sit, especially if it's mixed metallics or pearls. Over here, I've got a pre-mixed version of the Quicksilver Chrome with the Candy 2.0 Blood Red and the 40:40 bleed check. 1 to 1 ratio. Do not add any reducer. You do not need it. There is enough reducer already in each of these paints built into the bottle, so you don't need it. Make sure you stir it real good. I don't know if you can see it in there. You can see it almost has like a cool russet red, like a copperish anodizing. It's tough to see inside the cup, but it's really cool looking. I mean, you can't see the particulates of aluminum because they're so fine, so it looks like you're almost stirring colored mercury. Really kind of neat. But make sure it's stirred up real good. And pour right inside here. Now, by the way, you may have noticed that I am not wearing a respirator, and that's because I would sound like a bad fast food restaurant speaker outside, and you wouldn't be able to hear anything I'm saying. We do have ventilation here in between each of the shots we turn on to clear the room out. I highly recommend with all paint, solvent or water-based, you always use proper ventilation. We're also doing very, very low volume of overspray, using small guns, so that also makes a difference. If you see me wearing a mask in the future, I'm also going to probably be in a booth with a full-size gun. It's always good, better to be safe than sorry. So I've got in here that Quicksilver and Candy 2.0 anodized color. Now this can go over anything. I prefer to go over black. I think it looks the best. It does appear a little bit darker. You can go over white, but I just like the way it looks when sprayed over black. So I'm going to come in and very lightly do a light coat, and then spray, let that dry a little bit. Now that acts as that tack coat, and remember the aluminum, the Quicksilver chrome, it loves to be sprayed on first, light coat, and then you can come in, and it does dry fairly quickly, but you want to use that base coat first, otherwise it might mottle on you. Keep on spraying it. Now it does not dry as fast, and I'll tell you why, because the Quicksilver is only 1/3 of the element here. You've also got the 40/40, bleed check, and you've got the Candy 2.0. So what we've got here is a hybrid, so it will have some characteristics of all three, but not all the characteristics at equal levels. Not to mention, it creates a really cool product that none of the other ones can duplicate. It does require more coats to get the color built up on it. When you first start spraying these colored anodized colors, and you can use any of the Candy 2.0s, by the way, when making these anodized. The trick is the 1 to 1 ratio with the Quicksilver. You can add any of the candies, and it'll mix in. As a matter of fact, black candy looks really, really cool. Almost looks like a metallic obsidian when you spray it. But in the first couple of coats you spray, they look washed out. I've had some people say, I need to add more candy. I sprayed that anodizing, and all I saw was silver. And some of the lighter colors, like let's say the lemon yellow, and you spray it, and even the Carib blue, the first coat you spray, you're like, there's no candy in this, it's just silver. The silver has to build up a base color before that candy can really punch it out. So in a darker color, you just won't see anything, and all of a sudden you'll start seeing color. So it takes a few more coats. I may have done 2 or 3 coats of the Quicksilver. With the anodizing, you may need to do as many as like 3 to 4 coats before you see the color you really want. And the color you have here, it's kind of a dull russet red anodized look. What you're missing though is when this is cleared. When it's cleared, it really punches out, has a definite look, looks just like anodized metal. And we've used this in the movie industry. A couple of different studios I've worked at, we've done this because it's a heck of a lot easier to spray this on a piece of plastic or even styrofoam or even a 3D printed object, to spray this color on there and mimic the look of anodized metal than to actually do vacuumized metal or actually have the piece anodized. And it's much faster, and it can be repaired fairly quickly. And you saw how quick this stuff applies. Now, if I wanted this to have a really cool machine scratch look, like very, very distressed looking turned metal or something, I would come in and just take a Scotch-Brite or a coarse piece of sandpaper and just go over it in one stroke to create all those lines. Then I'd come in and lightly hit another coat on top, and that will give this really cool look of scuffed metal or brushed aluminum look. You can also do machine turning using small Scotch-Brites glued onto like little roll-lock pads. I do them with Dremels, small Scotch-Brites, and just come in and do bzz, 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 and you'll get that Julian effect. You do that either ahead of time on the black, or you can do that once you get a couple of coats down, let it sit. I let it sit about an hour to fully dry, because it's going to dry slower. Then come in and just go bzz, 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 machine turn it. And if you do a little bit too much or you burn away too much of the paint, you just fog it over and this paint will fall right in line with those machine turn scratches. Now if you're working on a number of these, you can go along and do one at a time in your booth, and by the time you get to the last one, it's time to do another coat on the first one. So it saves a lot more time. But I'm about done with that coat there. And this is the Candy 2.0 Blood Red mixed 1:1:1 with the 40/40 bleed check and the Quicksilver Chrome. So this is the silver Quicksilver Chrome on here. Next one we're going to do is the same mixture of candy, but mixed in with the new Quicksilver Gold Chrome. So let's see how that looks. Okay, got my gun all cleared out, and we've got our new mix here. This is the Quicksilver Gold Chrome with the Candy 2.0 Blood Red and the 40/40 bleed check, 1:1:1. I know I keep on saying it, but it's important. And no reducer. I know I keep saying that, and that's also important. You can give a look at this. It has a really, really cool look. Very similar to the other one, but this one's got a little bit more of an orangey glint to it, and that's because of the gold actually pushing the red more towards that yellow spectrum. So let's go ahead and put her in here and see what she does. A little bit of a shake, a little bit of a spray, and again, light coat. This gold sprays just like the silver. No difference whatsoever except for in color. So you still want to give it a little bit of a light spray first. I am noticing that I don't see the color as fast on this, and that would make sense because the gold's a little bit darker than the silver. Gold has less reflectivity than silver does, so you're not going to get that right off the bat. But I'm seeing more of an orange tone already. This is leaning way towards orange, which is nice. That's kind of cool. The gold really does have an effect. I was worried the gold would be reflective enough to look good, but not distinct enough to separate itself away from the Quicksilver. And I was wrong. It actually has a completely different tonal quality to it. It's very nice. Which gives another tool for your arsenal. If you're doing tape shades or graphics, you could intertwine Quicksilver Chrome with Quicksilver Gold Chrome and do like some different patterns. And it would, of course, work really well together. And you can mask on this stuff so soon by comparison to metallics and not leave any tape tracking. You can do all kinds of cool effects using the gold and the silver, then come in and spray candy on top. And then maybe even incorporate a couple of anodized colors within it before you spray the candy. So for lowriders, you can get an entire different set of techniques. And trust me, in custom painting, your techniques and tricks, that's your tools of the trade, that's your arsenal. Whoever knows the most tricks wins. Well, I always like discovering new paint tricks because there's so many classics out there that everyone knows. And so you can either reinterpret them or change them, whatever. But when you get something new on the market, like a new product, that's when you start using the term game changer. And that's what the Quicksilver, in my opinion, for Cratex and the Candy 2.0 are both game changers because it totally changes the way you can approach custom painting. Because you can literally use all the same great classic techniques and now you're open to so many more. Very, very cool stuff. Spraying air on it, making sure it stays dry, dries fast. That's good. I don't want to get too much on there, get it too wet. But I am kind of curious. Now, we haven't reached, I think we have reached the ceiling color on this because the last couple of passes have gotten some more depth, but the chroma stays the same. When you start noticing the color not changing at all, that's when you can just stop spraying because all you're doing is now adding material. The bleed check is doing, the 40/40 is doing its job. It's not letting the candy stack and get darker, darker, darker. It's literally like, okay, that's your level, and it literally stays the same. It's like just kind of continuing to keep that same color. Because what we're doing, if you think about it, the reason candies get darker is because you're increasing the distance of the base color, the elemental base, from the light source. So the more colors you have, it's got to penetrate all the way down further and further and further to get to that base to reflect back, and that makes it darker the more you have. What we're doing is we've got a base built in, and it's floating up with it. So every layer we are creating really not that much of an extra layer of candy to darken it up. And what the 4040 is doing is allowing each of the layers to seal itself to prevent the candy from leaching and walking up to the surface. So kind of a neat little trick using that 4040. And the reason you want to use the 4040 in this 1:1:1 ratio and not the 4030. Both of them will stick fine, both of them work great, but if you use the 4040 or the 4030 instead, you'll start noticing some colors darkening because you'll start leaching the candy and pulling it out of the base layers. Well, I've got a good coat. I'm going to do one more coat just because that's how I roll. It's always like one more coat. There we go. That's nice. I like that. Let that dry. Clean my airbrush out, and I'm going to put in a mixture of pure candy blood red, Candy 2.0, mixed for 50-50 with the 4030 and the reducer, and just do that pure candy and layer it on top of here in a graduating tone so you can see the different effects. This does not replace candy on top. It's an alternative. We can also come in and spray candy on top of this as well, and then turning this anodizing into a base system. So I just want you to understand all the different ideas you can do with these little tricks here, all the different ways you can put it together and make them your own. So let me clean this out and we'll get right on to the last stage. Okay, I'm back, got my gun good and cleaned out, and I decided I'm not going to spray this entire piece here with the Candy Blood Red. I'm going to use it and do the Candy Blood Red just blended down partially on this one, and this one. So not only do you see the difference between the transition on the silver, but you can also see the Candy Blood Red on top of the anodized colors as well. So we've got our mixed up Candy Blood Red. This is the Blood Red Candy 2.0 mixed 1:1:1 with 4040 bleed check, as well as actually, sorry, this isn't 1:1. My mistake. This is actually just Candy Blood Red mixed 50-50 with 40-30 and 10% 40-12. Get enough paints, you start getting confused. So anyway, we're going to put this in the airbrush. Stir it up nicely. Always give it a test spray. Good to go. And we're going to go ahead and just start basically, I'm going to start on the one over here with the Quicksilver. Do a little test spray up here, make sure it's spraying nice. And I'm not going to go all the way down. I'm just going to very carefully, I have this fan pattern set at horizontal. So that's my first initial light coat right there. I'm going to do another initial light coat here. So it's almost the same. I want the same level of red blended on each of these. Just the top down. There we go. And this one should be dry enough. I can come in and hit this one. A little bit heavier. Same thing with this. Same thing with this one. A little bit more air. It's drying, and a little bit of a heavier coat. And then just blow some air on these. Make sure they're dry. Come back to the first one. It looks pretty dry. I'm going to hit this one. This one. And again, now I'm just going to probably come and I'll tip them. In other words, I'm just going to hit a little bit more on the tip to really darken that tip. But make sure it's dry. Again, no heat, no hair dryers unless the heat setting's turned off or down very low. Heat may actually, you may think it's drying faster right off the bat, but it's going to be costing you stuff down the road. It'll cost you structural integrity, but it'll also, down the road, you'll get so much moisture trapped in there, the paint will just be, it will be dry, but it'll be gummy. It just won't dry for a very long time. It will eventually dry. Okay, just tipping it this time. Tipping this one, tipping this one, and then drying it. And I'll just do one more coat on the tip of each of these, and we'll be done. And that's it. Now, all masked up right here, it may be kind of difficult to see. These colors also look incredibly different once you clear coat them. And that's because the clear actually acts as a light transport, acts as a lens. It prevents it from having any of that dull area. When it literally brings to life and creates like a really amazing sense of depth by the light transferring all the way down. So in this case, we'll have a really nice sense of depth down to the silver, but we'll still have depth using the anodized colors as a base. Now, all of these things I showed you today are just examples of tricks, techniques you can try, mix and match them, try them around. I always encourage painters to experiment. When the manufacturers and companies come up with really great products, it's our duty to actually not follow the instructions exactly, to actually tweak them a little bit. Always do it on a test panel, but always push it to the limit. Let them know, let the manufacturers know, hey, I found a really neat way of using this candy, or hey, that's a neat trick that you showed us, but did you know it could do this as well? Half of the time, my great techniques I come up with, a lot of times they aren't mine. They're begged, borrowed, and stealed from the industry. Tried and true techniques I just twisted a bit. Some of them actually come from students of mine that don't even barely know how to hold an airbrush, but they have a different viewpoint on something. They try something, maybe by mistake, and you come across what they call a happy accident. But I'll tell you something, happy accidents, you can only depend on them when you've got the products, and you've got the arsenal, and you've got the experience to take advantage of it. So keep on experimenting, keep on painting, and definitely give these Quicksilver Chrome and the Quicksilver Gold Chrome, as well as all the candies, a try. My name is Fraser, and I will see you next time.